Welcome to CVM Television's one-on-one interview with Jamaican-Canadian billionaire Michael Leachin, who has been asked by Jamaica's new government to chair its Council of Growth and Economic Affairs, one of the new administration's key strategic moves to drive that elusive economic growth and grow employment. I'm Owen James. Mr. Leachin, welcome to this program. Its time has come.
Thank you, Owen.
And congratulations.
Thank you very much, Owen.
Okay. Now, the Council's advent comes at a time when Jamaica has received many kudos from the multilaterals, the IMF, the IDB, and the World Bank, on its efforts to cut debt and spend within its means. It also comes at a time when both political parties agree on the need for the four-year extended fund facility with the IMF. Following the recent announcement made by Prime Minister Andrew Holness, could you give us an insight into what is the Council of Growth and Economic Affairs and who does this body report to?
Well, Owen, the objective of the Council is to grow GDP growth and in so doing get jobs. The Council will be comprised of business people primarily, but also representative from the public sector. And each business person, each council member will have a responsibility, will have a portfolio. And that business person / council member will take the same attitude, approach that he or she would take if this was their only business. Yes. So it's number one, to design, number two, to advise the government, design a growth plan, advise the government, monitor, and in some cases, actually execute.
Mm-hmm. This business-driven approach, was it what attracted you to accept the offer from the government?
You know, we all have veranda talk and said, wouldn't it be great if governments could just run the country like a business? Now, we all have to remember, if you pray for rain, make sure you bring your umbrella.
Yes. Yes.
So this to me is the nirvana. This is the ultimate, because it's a partnership between government and the private sector. And in any partnership, for it to work, one has to define quite clearly what each partner's role is. In this case, government's role is to facilitate and enable. The private sector, as being guided by the council, its role is to get growth
going. Okay. Now, how do you communicate the successes and challenges within this arena? Because it's fascinating that this is happening, but the public needs to know about it on a regular basis. And I'm talking about information strategies now.
So in terms of, we have committed to report to the nation once per quarter, every 3 months, whether it be through the newspaper or through television. But we will be reporting to the nation every 3 months, because if you have a goal, you just don't wait until the end of the term that you say, did I meet it or did I not meet it? You're not going to hit the goal if that's your approach. But if you have a goal and you really are serious about hitting achieving it, you have to have milestones that you measure yourself as you go along. So every 3 months, we will report to the nation as to where we are in this 4-year journey. Is that the tenure of this appointment is 4 years.
Yes, yes. And why I ask that is the issue of accountability. We don't pay much attention to that. Very often we don't pay much attention to accountability. Now, who are these council members you allude to?
The council members will be, as I said, drawn from the business community and also eminent public sector individuals. The criteria for selection to be a council member is that, firstly, you must be a nation builder. Secondly, you must be motivated that now is a time that enough is enough. We have to do something different. You must be prepared to do things, to think out of the box and also work out of the box. This is not an easy task. So this opportunity, this task, will be no different from what we do in business every day.
Now, who are some of these members? We know you, and you're a successful businessman who knows both success and failure and know how to handle both. Who are some of the others?
So the key to a successful person is to surround him or herself with people who are better than him or her. So what you can be assured of, we'll have people on this council who are much better than I am.
Okay, good. Now, how does this Economic Growth Council differ from EPOC, the Economic Program Oversight Committee? How does it differ from that?
Well, firstly, we have to design a growth program. We have to advise the government. We work with the government. So designing, I think, is different. Advising and working side by side in the trenches is also different. We also have to monitor, which is, I think, is similar, and report to the country, which I think is similar.
It's quite a task. Now, Mr. Leachin, someone made this statement in Jamaica recently, and I want you to tell our viewers who made that statement and what do you think the person meant by it. Now, here goes. We should all be buying a piece of Jamaica or we are all going to be displaced. In Jamaica today, the table is set for growth. What should you do? Who made that statement? And can you answer it?
Well, I was the one who made that statement, and I'll just give you the context of that statement. It would have been about 10 years ago. I was being given an award by the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. And at the award ceremony, the minister said, "Did you realize that in the last 50 years, there's only one high school built in Harlem?" Now, I was aghast, because Harlem is in the middle of Manhattan. Harlem actually abuts to Central Park. He said, in the last 50 years, the single high school that was not built by the federal government, was not built by the state government, was not built by the city government. It was built by the Abyssinian Baptist Church. The Abyssinian Baptist Church has been at the heart of the gentrification of Harlem. And now that Harlem is being gentrified, the local native population of Harlem, they're being displaced because they were not traditional landowners, homeowners, asset owners, business owners. So with gentrification came the investors who saw an opportunity by virtue of Harlem's exquisite location. So they started buying up Harlem, pushing the price of Harlem up and displacing the local community to go somewhere else. Immediately when I heard that, I thought to myself, wow, we are working assiduously to gentrify Jamaica. This is a model. When we do gentrify Jamaica, by virtue of Jamaica's exquisite location, Jamaica has an exquisite location, we will have investors coming from all over the world, and if we are not owners of assets in Jamaica, we, the local population, will be displaced. So that was the thought that came to mind then, and I'll reiterate it today. We are going to ramp up the gentrification of Jamaica by getting growth, and with growth will come wealth. With growth will come it will become very attractive for other investors. So if we in Jamaica don't own a piece of the rock, we're going to get displaced.
Yes. When we come back, we'll examine with Mr. Leachin what he views as the true opportunities for economic growth and job creation in Jamaica. Welcome back to those who have just joined us. Our guest is Jamaican-Canadian billionaire Michael Leachin, an entrepreneur who turned an ailing financial entity into the island's most successful commercial banking group. You're chairman of Portland Holdings, the entity which owns controlling interests in several highly diversified entities, including banking, insurance, agriculture, and media.
So when we initially got involved with NCB, we thought the first thing we had to do was to redefine standards. Because if you're working every day in a situation, and it's very difficult for you to compare how you're doing relative to how the best is doing, right? So the first thing we had to do was to recalibrate what standards are. So likewise, the first thing we have to do with the Growth Council is to recalibrate what standards are. The second thing we had to do was to have high aspirational goals, which we did at NCB. And the third thing we had to do was to make everybody rally around a cause. In this case, we changed the mantra of NCB immediately in 2002 to building a better Jamaica. So when an NCB staff member went to work, then they'll be making a direct connection with their efforts today and building a better Jamaica for their children and grandchildren. The same formula is necessary, which we will inspire, that whenever we as Jamaicans, whether we are from the business sector, we are religious leaders, we are from the public sector, we are from the youth sector, the university sector, we always make a connection. How is my behavior today going to impact on my reputation and future? And the direct connection that I would love to see us all focus on is how is my behavior today going to impact on the growth objectives that we have for this country. It's not only the government's responsibility to get growth, it's everybody's responsibility.
No, Jamaicans feel passionately, some Jamaicans, about their politics. Will that in any way get in the way? Because sometimes we look at the messenger instead of the message. The growth strategies you're going to outline, the growth strategies which helped NCB to grow, you're going to try to replicate that on a national scale. But very often, some Jamaicans look at the messenger instead of the message and the desired impact of that message.
Well,
so tell me your strategy to
Well, firstly, if I was asked by any preceding government to have done this job, I'd have accepted. So I'm not a politician. My impetus is that when I think about the opportunities that I have had being a Jamaican, they came from me growing up in an era where we had growth. Had we not had growth when I was growing up, I would not be the person I am today. To give you an example, in 1969, I left Excelsior. And I needed a job because I wanted to go to university. And I was able to get a job at Alpart in the water lab, analyzing water. But I got a job. It so happens that in 1969, the GDP growth that Jamaica was experiencing then was 5.84% in 1969. If the GDP growth was not 5.84%, I would not have had a job and the outcome would have been totally different. 1970, I was still working in Jamaica. I left in September of 1970. The GDP growth in Jamaica was, you have any idea? One guess. Mr. Owen James. One guess. In 1970.
In 1970, it was actually over 6%.
It was 11.84%.
Yes.
11.84%. Yes. So you see, we have had a history of some growth, although it was in fits and spurts. But this generation wouldn't even remember that. So if we have just become desensitized to what growth really is, and we have accepted stagnation. So we have to recalibrate those standards.
And how do we handle the message? The message is important. How do we handle the message? How do we get it out there? How do we disseminate the hope, the sort of inspirational hope that you so espoused tonight?
Well, we have to communicate, and as I said, we'll communicate regularly. We'll communicate once per quarter, at least. That is our commitment. We have to get away from the politics of the assignment. I am not a political person. I'm a Jamaican first. There's a big risk I'm taking on with respect to this job, but someone has to do it. Someone has to step forward and say, look, I am mad as hell, because whenever I travel, I go to Cayman, I go to Bahamas, and I see countries that are in advance of Jamaica. Yet still, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they were not. What happened to us? Yeah. So if we just all hang back and do nothing, we're going to get what we have gotten. So someone has to step forward and say, notwithstanding the risks to career, to reputation, let's tackle this job head on, because the outcome, the positive outcome, is more beneficial than the risk of losing.
When we come back, more with the Honorable Michael Lee Chin. Welcome back to our one-on-one with Jamaican-Canadian billionaire Michael Lee Chin, an entrepreneur who has just been appointed chairman of the new administration's Economic Growth Council. Now, Mr. Lee Chin, where do you see these opportunities for growth? Because for several years, it's been quite elusive. Let's be frank. Apparently, we haven't seen them.
Well, if we want growth, we have to identify the major growth revenue drivers that we now have. And I won't list them off necessarily in priority form. Tourism, mining, agriculture, and remittances. Those are the four big ones. So the question is, how are we going to increase tourism, or the take from tourism, by 20%? Mining by 20%. Remittances by 20%, etc. That's the question. Because we need to have an impact on a big driver to stimulate growth. So let's talk about remittances as an example. It would be, I don't think it would be practical to go to all the, go to the diaspora and ask to send another 20% more to granny or auntie or child in Jamaica. But what if we could tap into the diaspora's long-term savings? They're saving for their retirement. What if they felt compelled that Jamaica is about to be gentrified and we had better own a piece of the rock? Then they could easily divert 20% of their some of their savings to Jamaica, right? So that's what we intend to do. We intend to visit all the diaspora pockets, have town hall meetings, talk to them about the plans, what is happening in Jamaica, and they'd better make sure they get on board before the train leaves, because Jamaica is going to be gentrified. Remember the Harlem story? And you want to own a piece of the rock. So we have to have investments available for the diaspora to feel comfortable and confident to put their long-term savings in. You know, everybody talk about FDI. We need more FDI. We need more FDI. But we should not assume that FDI is going to come to Jamaica unless us in Jamaica show confidence in Jamaica. Because once we show confidence, then it will come. Yeah. So now, confidence will come from us Jamaicans having confidence and investing in Jamaica. Now, there are two areas that are very inefficient in terms of our capital is incarcerated. Those areas are, number one, the pension funds. And I'm referring to also national saving plans, right? and private pension funds. And number two, insurance companies. Because a pension fund is a vehicle that makes long-term commitments to pay pensioners sometime in the future. Likewise, an insurance company is a vehicle that makes long-term commitments to pay the insured at some point in the future. So these entities, they have long-term illiquid liabilities. And the best way to offset having long-term illiquid liabilities is to invest in long-term illiquid assets. That's the best way to offset. Now, if you ask the question, can our pension funds and insurance companies, under the present legislation, do they have much latitude to invest in long-term illiquid assets? The answer is no. Secondly, we have a situation whereby pension funds can only invest, as per the Bank of Jamaica's restriction, 5% outside of Jamaica, meaning 95% has to be invested within Jamaica. And within that, the context of that 95%, there are legislative strictures that hamstrings the pension funds to be invested primarily in government bonds. Yeah. That is not where, but there are billions of US dollars cumulatively speaking in pension funds and insurance companies. So we need to make sure that our legislations are reflective of the needs of the country and the pensioners today. So we have to review that with the objective of becoming more modern, more like what Canada has, right? The Canadian pension plan is now today one of the most successful pension plans in the world. And the Canadian pension plan has the latitude to invest anywhere in the world 100%. It wasn't so 25 years ago, but over time Canada opened it up, and it has been a boon. We have to do the same in Jamaica.
Before we go to the next sector, I want to ask you, how optimistic are you that gridlock won't take over when we're trying to change the legislation to pave the way for more successful investment of pension funds?
Well, I am sure, there's always, whenever you see something that is inefficient, and you say, why is that inefficiency being maintained? You have to say, the answer always lies in there's someone profiting from the inefficiency, right? So, gridlock, if we can show case studies where, and let's go back to the constraints on pension plans. If we can show case studies, and I can, Canada, yeah, right, CPP, whereby that went through the same situation that we are going through in Jamaica. And we have people who are just blocking for the sake of blocking. Then at the quarterly meetings, I'll have to talk about that. Because remember, I am putting my reputation on the line. And I have to make sure that I'm transparent with what the blockages are. So I'll speak about the blockages.
And who are the people blocking it?
And who the people are that are blocking. Because we need to make sure, there's a saying, if you want maximum velocity, the first thing you have to do is to minimize friction.
Yes. Now, let's look at another sector that many see as a low-hanging fruit, tourism. What else can we do to get more out of that sector, more for Jamaica? More of that tourism dollar residing in Jamaica?
Well, the first thing we have to do is get control of security, right? We have to get control of security. We have to also be more, get control of compliance. No tourists want to go to any country and be harassed. So we have to be vigilant in our compliance. We should have zero tolerance for harassment. That will now pave the way for the gates, because we have the tourist traffic, but the tourists are locked into the campuses, the hotels, the all-inclusives.
Yes.
So we have the traffic. We just need to encourage the all-inclusives now to open their gates and let the tourists go and experience Jamaica. Because right now, they're missing a fantastic experience, which is not being a part of seeing the society, seeing the culture, going to the local restaurants, the local bars, and having just interaction with Jamaicans. They're missing that. So one of the objectives will be to figure out how we can encourage the existing industry to open their gates and let their visitors visit. But we have to pave the way so that they're confident that their visitors aren't going to be harassed and their visitors will be secure.
And that the locals are convinced that it's in their interest as a stakeholder,
yes,
to ensure the safety of the tourists.
Yes.
Yes, that's one angle in the tourism. What about the linkages sector? I'm sure you're familiar with the linkages thrust in tourism, where Jamaican businesses are encouraged to sell goods and services to the hotel chains. Can we do much more with that?
Well, we have to be fair. We as providers of services, goods and services, we have to be fair to the hotel chains also. We have to make sure that we are competitive, right? We have to make sure that we are competitive in terms of quality, in terms of consistency, in terms of pricing. So until we get to that point, it's not fair for us to ask the hotelier to pay for our inefficiencies. So we have to figure out how we're going to get to that point. And then it may be like some give and take, but we just have to work with each other.
Now, the other sector you mentioned was mining. Now, mining, bauxite is our primary ore, but the commodities market there is very volatile. How can we get more out of it?
Well, the commodities business, the price, we have no control over the price. That's just a world market situation. Hopefully, we're seeing the bottom of the cyclical nature of the commodities business. Hopefully, with time, the European Union will start seeing more growth. China will start seeing more growth, and we can sell more limestone, we can sell more bauxite, we can sell more alumina. So, but in the interim, we have to make sure that we go to the bauxite the owners of the bauxite industry, the Chinese and the Russians.
Yeah, the Russians.
Rusal.
Yeah,
and say to them,
Rusal.
look, we are on a growth initiative in Jamaica. We need your help. We need for you to have, number one, not to shutter your factories, your plants, but to figure out, let's work together to see how we can get your plant going 150%. Right? So what do we have to do to enable you to feel so confident that you will turn on all the switches, pull out all the stops to get your plants operational 150%? What do we have to do? Tell us. And you tell us. If it makes sense, we'll work with you to get there.
Okay. When we come back, some more interesting question for Mr. Leachin, who has been appointed chairman of an economic growth council, a vehicle that the new administration hopes will drive that elusive economic growth. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're watching CVM Television, and this is a special one-on-one program with entrepreneur Michael Leachin, who has just been appointed chairman of an economic growth council to help the island achieve that elusive economic growth. Now, Michael, before this break, we were discussing some of the low-hanging fruits, and you mentioned tourism, mining, and remittances.
Yes.
Now, agriculture.
Yes.
What part can that play in that growth? People are eating organically now. You and I eat organic. I'm sure, right?
Yes.
What are the prospects for agriculture in this scenario?
Well, I'll give you a personal example that we experienced. It was September, October of 2013. The government was divesting itself of the coffee industry, their interest in the coffee industry, which was Wallingford. So we were the winners. We bought Wallingford. So when we bought Wallingford, we realized, well, we knew this before, because coffee production in Jamaica had fallen from 9 million pounds to 1.2 million pounds over the preceding 10 years. Now, if you think about it, Owen, if you were to go to Germany or New Zealand and said, Mr. German, Miss New Zealander, have you ever heard of Blue Mountain Coffee? They would say, of course. Then if you were to say, the next question is, so when you think of Blue Mountain Coffee, what do you associate it with? They're going to say, it's expensive, it's high quality, and I can't get it. Oh, really? Expensive, high quality, and I can't get it. Now, the next question to that you ask is, so if it's expensive, high quality, and you can't get it, do you think everybody who is associated with the production of Blue Mountain Coffee is wealthy? Of course, what do you think the answer is going to be? Must be wealthy. But against what they think, the perception that they have, the reality is production went from 9 million pounds to 1.2 million pounds over the last 10 years. Crazy. Crazy.
So that's a major low-hanging fruit.
It's a major low-hanging fruit. So now, if you think about it further, every single business in the world would love to have those brand associations. They would love to have for their product to be recognized as expensive, it's high quality, and I can't get it. Because that's when they have margins. They can control their margins. So we have it, and yes, our production went down. So the first thing we had to do was to make the farmers' business one that is sustainable. So we went to Japan in December of 2013, and we sell 80% of our production. Jamaica sells 80% of its production to Japan. So in 2012, the year before we took over, the price that the Japanese were paying was $25 per kilogram. So we said, you know, we need to increase the price because the business is not sustainable at the farm level. So they were gracious. They said, okay, how much do you want? 10%? Yes. They said, okay, $28. So we got an increase. So we came back home and we were able to increase the price that the farmers got for their green berries. This is just 2.5 years ago. Today, the Japanese graciously are paying $65 per kilogram from 25 2.5 years ago. And our farmers are now getting not $2,500 per box. A box has 10 pounds, which they were getting in 2012. They're getting $12,500 per box. So what is now happening is everybody is now running back into coffee production. Farmers now have the opportunity that their children can go to university and become doctors or lawyers, or if they so desire, can come back to the farm and have a business.
Yes. No.
So that's a microcosm of what else we can do in other areas of Jamaica, in other areas of agriculture. Because coffee, we are blessed. We have coffee that is unique. So what other produce do we have that are unique? Yeah. We have cocoa. Our cocoa is recognized as the finest in the world. We have ginger. Our ginger is recognized as the finest in the world. Yet ginger production has also gone down. 25 years ago, on every single bottle of Canada Dry beverage, Canada Dry drink, was the inscription, ginger made from Jamaican ginger, right? Yeah. On every single bottle. So we have these these produce that are not really commodities, because of their high end and their quality. So cocoa, coffee, ginger, what else? Sea island cotton. Yeah. Most present generation Jamaicans don't recognize that we had a big sea island cotton industry because our sea island cotton was the best in the world. So we now have to go back and start redeveloping those areas that we have allowed to have gone down.
Let's dream a little and assume that all that we have discussed tonight will come to fruition, what will Jamaica look like 5 years from now?
The wish and hope is that one question you didn't ask me, which is what's the objective for GDP growth?
Well, go ahead.
Right?
Answer.
And the objective is our term is for 4 years. Yeah. At the end of 4 years, we want to have GDP growth of 5% per year. This is coming from over the last 20 years, you recall, less than 0.5%. And over the last 10 years, less than 0.2%. We want to ramp it up to 5%. Once we get to that point, what it means is that every single Jamaican will have the hope and the opportunity, and they'll realize and they'll feel tomorrow is better than today. Today, as we stand today, that's not the case. Once we get to that point, every single Jamaican will say, wow, I too, if I want to get a job, to go to university, I can go because jobs are available, and my life will be opened up, just like Michael Leachin. That's my goal.
Well, when the average Jamaican hear us talk about 5% GDP growth and so on, I wanted to visualize some of the things for that ordinary Jamaican. What will happen after that 4 year, and we're making the assumption that this thing will succeed, because there's no option of failure, is there?
Well, that's a good point you're making. It will only succeed if all of us Jamaicans realize it's not it cannot succeed if we depend on a few entities like the government or this new Economic Growth Council. It will only succeed if all of us realize that we have an input. Every Jamaican has an input. Therefore, I've made a pledge. I'm saying I'm going to take the leadership position. I've made a pledge that we're going to work day in tirelessly and passionately to deliver over the next 4 years, a 5% GDP growth. That's the pledge. We're going to work tirelessly and passionately to get there. But it will only happen if we get a public and written pledge from all our stakeholders. Everybody's going to benefit, which would include religious leaders. I want a written pledge from religious leaders, from union leaders, from the business community, from the youth communities. I want a written pledge. The political parties, opposition,
the media,
right? The diaspora, the media, as to what their pledge is in regards to their contribution to 5% GDP growth. It's not going to happen if we don't get public pledges from all the stakeholders. And I've given mine.
We take a break. More one-on-one when we return. Welcome back to the final segment of our one-on-one with the newly appointed chairman of Jamaica's Council of Growth and Economic Affairs, the Honorable Michael Leachin. Now, Mr. Leachin mentioned a dream of a 5%, 4 to 5% GDP growth during his 4-year tenure as chairman of this new facility. Mr. Leachin, break it down for the average Jamaican. We're talking about GDP growth. What about that unemployed youth out there, or the man with, on the corner?
Okay, so
what can we tell that person on the corner?
I don't want to build false hopes too quickly. Yeah. In other words, nothing is going to happen tomorrow unless all of us participate. That's the first thing. So let me just roll back in history to dramatize what economic growth is. In 1902, there was a hotel in Port Antonio with 400 rooms. It was the Titchfield Hotel. Now, there were not very many cities in the world with a hotel that had 400 rooms. We had it in Port Antonio in 1902, 114 years ago. We had that in Port Antonio. Now, if you take $1, and you put it in, get 6% return on it, right? And it will grow at the end of 114 years to be $400. So if you start off with $400 and you get your 6% return on it, it will be worth 400 times 400, which is $160,000, right? So in 1902, if we start off with 400 rooms, and we were doing a good job stewarding and getting 6% growth on the 400 rooms, 6% more tourists coming every year, right? Today, we'd have 400 times 400 rooms, which is 160,000 rooms in Port Antonio alone. To put things in context, in Jamaica, we probably have 40,000 rooms in the whole of Jamaica. We should have had 160,000 in Port Antonio alone if we're doing a good job stewarding our assets and making the tourist industry more viable, right? The question is, how many rooms do we have? Less than 400. So what does it mean? What would it have meant if we had this type of prosperity? It means that we would have full employment. That's what it means. It means that every citizen now would say, I can put my children through high school, university, I can get good medical facilities, right? I can have access, right? Access to education, better health care, better medicine, better opportunities, right? I can buy a house, right? I can buy a car, I can pay my bills, and I can save for retirement. I can travel. This is what it means to everybody if we have growth.
So the messaging is very important, and it has to be realistic.
Yes.
You volunteered for this, or you were gently pushed into it?
You know, I've been thinking about, as is the case with many Jamaicans, what would I do instead of complaining? What would I do if I were in the seat, right? And I had some impact, I could have some impact. What would I do? So, and as a citizen who has reaped the benefit of being a Jamaican, it is something that is topical in my mind, right? What can I do to help? Because I'm not happy with this. Yes. So when the opportunity came, I certainly did not back down.
Yeah. But it's a huge bet, reputationally and otherwise.
Yes.
So there's no option of failure from your vantage point?
No. We have to go forward. This table is set in Jamaica. We have low energy price, low telecommunications price. We have the BPO industry that is growing rapidly, right? So we have a fiscal house that is coming from shambles into something that is more presentable,
yes,
right? So the table is set. So now is the time that we have to recognize that the opportunity is there to really do something spectacular and write a history that 10 years from now, the world will look at us and say, wow, the Jamaican miracle.
Yeah. And there's a certain level of rapprochement between the two political parties.
Yes.
Because in her concession speech, Mrs. Simpson-Miller mentioned the strength of our democracy, and the new Prime Minister also mentioned the strength of our new democracy. So we have some good things going.
Yes.
And you're going to help to build upon those things.
My pledge is that I'll work tirelessly to do whatever is necessary to drive growth, which is my commitment. And by the way, it's not 4 or 5%. We're aiming for 5% in 4 years.
In 4 years.
It's specific.
Specific,
yes.
Yeah.
My commitment is not only a specific number, but also to report to the nation every quarter, to be transparent, to address this issue with hopefully a lot of intelligence and a lot of passion, because failure is not an option. We don't like what we see today.
Yeah. This has been CBM Television's One-on-One with Michael Lee Chin, a highly motivated businessman who was today appointed to chair the new Jamaican government's Council of Growth and Economic Affairs. All eyes on CBM TV, where we are first, fearless, and factual. I'm Owen James.